We are honored that Dr. Thomas Lovejoy is here this evening. Referred to, as we mentioned earlier, as the godfather of biodiversity because, as George mentioned earlier, he coined the term biodiversity. Dr. Lovejoy is recognized worldwide for his innovative work as a preservation biologist. His accomplishments and contributions to our planet are too numerous to list tonight. It would take volumes. But among them, he is a recipient of the Blue Planet Prize, awarded to individuals or organizations that make outstanding achievements in scientific research, helping to solve global environmental problems. But I want to talk about something else. In the late 1960s, Tom was moved to teach a course in ecology once a week at the Millbrook School in New York. His experience as a Millbrook student during the 1950s had been life-changing for him, and he was moved to give something back to the school. A few boys showed up to attend this voluntary class. This young man, then in his late 20s, engaged the class in ways that their other teachers never had. The boys were excited and inspired, enthralled really, by the ways that he brought the sheer wonder of this planet and its relationships and our responsibility to care for it. A pilot light was lit, and that little pilot light built into a flame that was to change the course of many of the boys' lives that attended that class. I was 16 or 17, and I was one of the boys in that class. This generosity of spirit is something that Tom has become known for, as he inspires, encourages, and educates his colleagues, students, friends, family to unfold into their highest potential. For me, Tom is so much more than his resume. He is just showing us that each day is another opportunity to serve life in a way that is unique for our individual gifts and talents. It's been said that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. I've known Tom for over 40 years. I understand that Tom humbly demonstrates this with the way he leads his life. He cares about his relationships with people, and he cares about our relationships with all living things. So I never thought I'd be standing here saying this, but it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Thomas Lovejoy. Tom will speak about the importance of the Lemur Conservation Foundation's work to conserve and protect lemurs and the biodiversity of Madagascar's diminishing rainforests. His talk is entitled Windows on Other Worlds. Tom, welcome.
So in 1973, I was looking for a job, and I ended up as employee number 13 for a tiny little organization called the World Wildlife Fund, United States. I mean, it was amazing, and we took a chance on each other. And So I started sort of like in October 73, and the first Monday in May, our program chair decided we should have a workshop to decide what our priorities would be. And we went out to a Smithsonian Conference Center, which no longer exists. It was Andrew Mellon's daughter's former estate. And we assembled, many of the great sort of people in this field today. We would call them conservation biologists. And the secretary of the Smithsonian, Dylan Ripley, who was chair of the board of the World Wildlife Fund US, gave this eloquent introduction like only Dylan Ripley could do. I mean, he was so good with the English language that he actually, after he stepped down from being secretary, was asked to be head of the English-speaking union. And then another member of the board spoke, incredibly well-intentioned person who had harried the staff to prepare his speech. And he is giving this speech, and he comes to a list of endangered species, which include the white rhinoceros, the green turtle, and something he unfortunately called the orange Yutang. And nobody laughed. I mean, God bless all those scientists, right? And we had this 2-day workshop, and we decided that the priorities for the World Wildlife Fund US, which was the only, at that point, active international conservation organization, would be Western Hemisphere, tropical, and science-based. And so that made a lot of sense. But I couldn't stand doing that unless somehow we found something to do for Madagascar. And at that point, the world had little clue about the wonders of Madagascar. There was nothing that you could read other than deep scientific papers about all of that. And the board actually allowed me to put together a project to produce the first book about the wonders of Madagascar. And that was a book produced by Alison Jolly with photographs by Russ Kinney, who was then sort of the top wildlife photographer for Time and Life magazine. And they went off, and I don't know how long they spent in Madagascar, but they produced this extraordinary book called A World Like Our Own. And while I couldn't keep doing things for Madagascar right away from that position, that actually set things up to begin to open up Madagascar to all these wonderful people who have worked in it ever since, of which the Lemur Conservation Foundation is such an extraordinary example. So in many ways, I've been just 1 degree of separation away from Madagascar ever since. And I finally got to go with the former Secretary of the Smithsonian and his wife in 1987 and experience the wonders, this biological treasure chest, deeply endangered, with an incredibly interesting human population, and I've been following that ever since. So about a week ago or 10 days ago at the World Economic Forum in Davos, David Attenborough, now age 92, but at heart still 14 years old, and that's his secret. That's why he's so successful. He gave a 5-minute statement to the World Economic Forum about the state of nature in the world. And you can Google it, and I really recommend that you do that Googling. And he basically said, you know, for most of his incredible career, covering nature for the BBC and producing all these amazing series from Life on Earth to Blue Planet, etc. He said he finally truly understood what the challenge is to life on Earth. And he literally said, the Garden of Eden is no more. I mean, it was, as only he could do, it was a really tough, punchy statement. But he also, in that 5 minutes, said there are lots of things that can be done. And so that's the world situation. Madagascar is that it's hard to call it a microcosm because it's so big, but that's the preview of what the whole world is going through. And that's why what this foundation is doing is so incredibly important. So the Lemur Conservation Foundation and similar institutions are incredibly important because they are windows on the world, on worlds like our own, to use Allison's title, but different. And in the case of Madagascar, 120 million years of difference in evolution. A California-sized island with a truly, truly remarkable flora and fauna. Fascinating to me since I was in high school at Millbrook. All the lemurs, including the amazing ii. You know, it's the only species in its family. It is truly a bizarre animal. I mean, it sort of looks as though it put its finger in an electric socket. Right? It's like, right? And the Vanga shrikes, the spiny desert, which almost looks as though it was designed by Salvador Dali. I mean, really, I mean, it's just amazing. The smallest chameleon in the world, tiny little guy, right? And an incredible human population, which is why it's so great that Jokes is with us tonight, and you will hear from him shortly. And so it's sort of a California-sized microcosm of what we're facing as a planet, and why it is so important to actually engage in that situation and arrive at a better outcome and show the entire world that it's possible to have a better outcome. So this is a really fabulous organization because it's much more than those wonderful animals and the propagation and all the rest that's so important that goes on at Mayaka City. There's a lot of on-the-ground conservation and conservation research. Because it's one thing to want to do conservation, it's another thing to learn how to do it even more effectively. And that requires constant sort of scientific inquiry. And this organization does all of that. And so in the end, it is not surprising for those who knew her that Mopsy Lovejoy was drawn to the Lemur Conservation Foundation, living here in Sarasota in the colder months of the year up north. Not surprising at all that she was drawn to the foundation and Madagascar, multiple trips to Madagascar and to the foundation with Marty, and how delighted she would be that Madeline, our granddaughter, is doing an LCF internship right now. So years ago, when I was at the World Wildlife Fund, I remember inviting a wonderful lady named Marjorie Arundel to come to the Amazon. And Marjorie was amazing. She was the person who turned the Garden Clubs of America into an environmental organization. And once a year, they have a meeting in Washington, and it's 2 days. So there's a meeting where they meet together, and the next day they advance on Capitol Hill, right? And if you think about it, outside of every city in America, there's a house, a White House on a hill, and in it lives a member of the Garden Clubs of America, right? I mean, they're a pretty fierce, influential group, and they all sort of march on Capitol Hill, right? And I think they deserve a lot more credit than they've been recognized for. But the point of mentioning Marjorie is that I once invited her, about when she was 90, I said, well, why don't you come to the Amazon and see the Amazon rainforest? And I got this wonderful letter back from her in which she said, all the thank yous and stuff. And she said, for me, it's just enough to know that the Amazon is still there. And as I think about the Lemur Conservation Foundation, that's part of what motivates everybody who helps this amazing organization do the important things that it does. So I have a lot of thanks to this organization for what it does there, to Penelope, to Allison, to George, to Eric, and so many others, extraordinary professionals who actually make this organization so wonderful and successful. So thank you to the foundation for all you do and will do, and to all here tonight for being part of this noble effort. Thank you.